Ors, the ancient giant, was Joy Boy. This is one of the most popular and crazy sounding One Piece theories in existence, so I sat down for the last 48 hours straight and gathered all the evidence that I could find on the internet to see if it's plausible or not. And I ended up going down a rabbit hole so deep that it made me question everything that I thought I had known about One Piece, especially with recent events in the manga. Here's what I found, starting with what we know for a fact about the mysterious figure Joy Boy and the even more mysterious race of ancient giants in One Piece. We do know that Joy Boy lived about 800 years ago, around the time of the Void Century. We know that he had a promise with Fishman Island that he would raise the Noah with the help of Poseidon, but for an unknown reason, that promise was broken. We also know that the giant elephant Zanisha was also a companion of Joy Boy's, and at some point, Joy Boy left an unimaginable treasure behind at the end of the Grand Line. A treasure now known as the One Piece. And Joy Boy also explained on the poneglyphs that he would return in 800 years time. Enter Luffy, who upon unlocking Gear 5th for the very first time against Kaido, was proclaimed by Zanisha to be the second coming of Joy Boy. But wait, if we're talking about Ors being Joy Boy, some of you probably are already thinking about a potential problem here. If we look back to Thriller Bark, it's stated that Ors died around 500 years ago. After all, Moria found him frozen in the land of ice. Now, I'm no mathematician, clearly, but 800 and 500 are two very different numbers, so doesn't that throw a little bit of a wrench into this entire theory already? Well, not really. And there are two reasons for this. First, as we'll discuss in more detail in just a second, there are actually not one but two candidates for Luffy. One is the Ors that Luffy fought on Thriller Bark. We know that regular giants have crazy long lifespans. After all, Dodi and Broggy were just casually dueling for 100 years. Ancient giants who are multiple times taller than regular giants could have an even longer lifespan as well. Also, with the ice preserving Ors's tissue, the dating here could just be plain wrong, making his death look a lot more recent than it actually was. However, let's just say that Ors actually lived around 500 years ago, the time that the explorer Nolan lived in One Piece as well, and Moria just knows that. It could also have been one of Ors's ancestors. Ors Jr. is Ors III. That means there was an Ors II. The giant skull in Onigashima has a good chance to be related to Ors as well, so this could make Moria's Ors II, and this one, the giant one, Ors I, and therefore Joy Boy. We'll get into more detail about that in just a second here, because I want to stick with the frozen in ice thingy for a little longer here, because it is one of the main themes that unites all ancient giants in the story. Now, when Moria dug up Ors, he was frozen in ice and then frozen again later on Thriller Bark, but this is far from the only frozen giant that we've seen in the series. In Punk Hazard, there were a bunch of frozen preserved giants. The Yeti Cool Brothers here were some icy giants, also on Punk Hazard. The man who froze half of Punk Hazard, Aokiji, froze one of our favorite giants on Ohara, Jaguar D. Sol. And he also froze the new Joy Boy, Luffy. And of course, in the giant freezer in Marijoa, Imu keeps a giant frozen straw hat, one that just happens to be appropriately Ors-sized. And the straw hat, by the way, is the second thing that ancient giants just seem to share throughout the story. Next to the giant one in Marijoa, you have the Yeti Cool Brothers wearing actual straw hats, just like Luffy. Sol wore a hat, Ors Jr. got a straw hat from Ace, and as we know, Moria's Ors was looking for his straw hat as well. Now, these are all facts in the story that we've already seen, but this is just the first of 5 layers that I've discovered, because this theory goes much deeper, and the last level is a theory so insane that, if true, would change One Piece forever as we know it. So let's go one deeper and look at the core of this theory. Are there actual signs, or even better, some evidence that Ors was Joy Boy, Luffy's predecessor? Well, let's start simply from a power perspective, where Ors seems to definitely qualify for the role of Joy Boy. Now, you probably remember that Moria once challenged and got defeated by Kaido in Wano. That was when he was still a rookie. It's also when he took Ryuma's body to turn him into a zombie as well. And when the Straw Hats arrived in Thriller Bark, Moria had still not given up on becoming Pirate King and challenging the Yonko. So he thought that with Ors's zombie, even if not with the same full strength of the original, signal he could defeat Kaido this time. I mean, Moria has the bodies of people like Ryuma and Captain John, one of the former Rocks pirates, and still, his masterpiece to becoming Pirate King was Oars. He clearly knew exactly whom he had pulled out of the ice there, and so apparently did the government. Now, Zoro's sacrifice for Luffy and the crew, as well as the battle at Marineford, were two such incredibly epic moments that Eiichiro Oda got to sneak in a very important detail pretty much unnoticed. The government tried to assassinate Moria not just once, but twice after they found out that he had recovered Oars. First, they sent Kuma to do it, and then during the war at Marineford, someone, quote-unquote, above the Marines ordered Doflamingo to take Moria out as well. And there are really not that many people that could do that. It was either Imu himself or the Gorosei, an order from the highest level. The Five Elders and Imu, of course, know about Joy Boy and the Void Century. They've worked hard to eradicate any evidence from his existence or his powers from history. I mean, just remember how hard they tried to hunt and discredit Joy Boy's Nika fruit that was ultimately stolen by Shanks and then eaten by Luffy. And meanwhile, the government themselves also wanted to create an army of ancient giants. As Law explains to us, it would be their ultimate and unbeatable weapon. The same is true for Big Mom and Kaido, both of whom most likely know about Joy Boy. Just remember the giant kids from Punk Hazard, as well as the numbers. I mean, Kaido, who himself has strong Oni features, believed himself to be Joy Boy for a while before he then started looking for someone else who could possibly fill that role. Blackbeard and Rocks, two people who most likely also know more about the true history than most others, might know about Oars' significance too. Blackbeard's Jolly Roger are 3 skulls, and those 3 skulls can also be found on both Oars and Oars Jr.'s belts. Meanwhile, Rocks' Jolly Roger is a skull with horns. Now, this could be a coincidence, and maybe it means something completely different. We really don't know yet. What we do know is that Oars was actively painted as evil. He is described as the cruel giant called the Continent Puller. That's because legend has it that he amassed countries and islands under his control with his band of villains. Now, it's very plausible that Oars was a terrible monster. That's a real possibility, but there's also a decent chance that things might not just be what they seem here. Because we do know that the world government is pretty much the Marie Kondo of changing people's history and true nature. Does this person inspire love and hope in you? Defame them, call them a devil, get creative and extinguish the spark of joy for anyone who tries to rise up against you. So Oars being called a devil goes very well with what we know from Nico Robin, and the devil, as you know, is the enemy of God. Now, there is a whole lot of symbolism surrounding the giants and the devil that I just won't get into too much here. There's Saul's biblical name, devil fruits, Adam and Eve tree, you get it. The point is, devils in One Piece are the good guys. As for the continent pulling, well, this hasn't been officially confirmed, but it seems pretty clear that Wano is the result of just that, continents being pulled together. It's a mix of different islands with different climates pulled together, possibly so that different people and races from all across the world could live there in peace and safety together. If you remember Toki, who traveled into this time period from the Void Century itself, and who is part of the Wano clans and culture, did not actually know where Wano was and was looking for it. And so the simple explanation here could be that Wano as a place simply didn't exist yet. Maybe Joy Boy told her of his plans to create the island Wano and told her to go look for it. Now this of course goes hand in hand perfectly with the gargantuan skull located right in front of Wano. It's possibly Oars' ancestor who died after pulling the islands together. We do know that Zunisha was Joy Boy's companion, which would make a lot of sense size-wise here. And don't forget that Zunisha heard Joy Boy's return as Luffy awakened his fruit on top of the gigantic skull. The same skull that Kaido, who was obsessed his entire life with Joy Boy's return, made his headquarters on. Now, really, we have gotten no confirmation yet if that giant creature here was actually alive at some point, nor who it really was. So this could all just be a bit of a red herring that Oda's throwing at us. But let's go another level deep. According to most theories, the main piece of evidence for one version of Oars being Joy Boy is Oars' supposed parallels and connections with Luffy during Thriller Bark. And I mean, most obviously, first of all, he gets Luffy's shadow. Just like Luffy is the second coming of Joy Boy, Luffy and Oars have a direct link now. And Oars does behave exactly like Luffy, however, isn't that explained pretty much by Luffy's shadow being inside him? After all, the zombies do all take on parts of the personality from the shadow that they're infused with. Well, there could be an explanation for that. You see, other shadow zombies seem to be in conflict a little bit between the shadow personality and the body's original personality. For example, Ryuma's original personality and Brook's shadow seem to be vying for control here and there seems to be a bit of a mismatch between the two. However, Oars is immediately acting just like Luffy, and there's never another sign of any other personality besides that, really. Now, we could see that as him simply adopting Luffy's personality, but it could also be that Luffy and the original Oars were more alike than we would initially expect them to be. For example, we do see Oars attempting to put on a straw hat. Now, he doesn't find a giant straw hat, but he does make do temporarily with a piece of a building. Now again, this could just be interpreted as Luffy's strong personality looking for his signature treasure, Straw Hat, but we've seen a giant straw hat beneath Marijoa that would be a perfect fit for this particular ancient giant. What I personally find much more peculiar is when Oars attempts to use Gomu Gomu techniques, the zombie body actually stretches. Now, the reasoning we get for this within the arc is that the body is just following the shadow. But is that actually what's happening? I mean, what if Oars' body already had rubber properties because he already had Luffy's devil fruit while he was alive? Of course, this is something we can only speculate on for right now. We don't have any other example of a zombie with a devil fruit besides Brook's, and that one isn't exactly applicable because of its special use. In addition, we haven't been able to see whether the body of a devil fruit user maintains properties of its devil fruit. For example, would Luffy's body stay rubbery after death, or would it just revert back to normal once the fruit is reincarnated? Now, I do think that Oars being already stretchy is much less of a stretch than suddenly gaining devil fruit abilities through Moria's powers and kind of Luffy's shadow influencing the corpse to that crazy degree. I mean, otherwise, Moria has one of the most powerful fruits of all time, being basically able to clone abilities from the people he steals the shadows from. Also, I mean, speaking of stretches right now, this is a real reach, but if you look at the swirl patch on Oars' belly, it kind of resembles the pattern of the Gomu Gomu no Mi. But I mean, that's just really random. Probably means nothing. And while we're at it right now, let me throw in another few random pieces of evidence here, like Oda making meat Oars' favorite food, or that Oars says that Luffy is his enemy and introduces himself when Sanji addresses him as Luffy. So Oars is clearly aware of who he is, just like Ryuma. And on the cover for volume 48, we see Oars and Luffy in the same pose, with Oars' teeth giving Luffy horns. Now, could this be more evidence for the theory? I mean, I guess it makes sense if you want to look at it that way, but these could all also be explained differently or simply be coincidences. So let's be critical here and give Moria the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he really has the most ridiculous devil fruit in the world. Maybe Oars is simply so much like Luffy because Luffy's shadow is just that powerful. And honestly, I personally don't even think that this Oars was Joy Boy at all. I mean, it could well have been foreshadowing for a version of Oars being Joy Boy, because the gargantuan skull on Onigashima is still my personal favorite candidate here. If anything, Thriller Bark might have been more of a giant hint for the real Joy Boy and what he was like, which was most likely a whole lot like Luffy. Now, Luffy is already confirmed to be Joy Boy, and we've already seen Luffy turn into a giant at more than one occasion. We have a number of different versions of Gear 3rd, but in particular his giant form during his awakening that allowed him to beat Kaido. That fist right there was the size of Onigashima, which would have been the right size of the creature whose skull we see here. And since Moria was convinced that Oars could defeat Kaido, well, maybe he was right about that and foreshadowed this exact exact moment. Because interestingly enough, it's the exact same giant fist that makes Kaido recognize Luffy as Joy Boy before, well, he's completely obliterated, really. So let's just say we push aside Oars on Thriller Bark for a second here as a candidate for Joy Boy and focus on this. Who were these Giga Giants, like the skull on Onigashima or this one on Punk Hazard, and where did they go? You know, it's time to go down another level. This is where things get super spicy. But first, if you've enjoyed this video so far and made it to the final level, well, congratulations, and please make sure to subscribe for more content. I have a ton of awesome stuff just like this coming up. Now, Oars and Oars Jr. are already the largest giants in One Piece, but they dwarf in comparison with these two skulls. The numbers who are failed attempts to make ancient giants easily fit inside the giant skull dome to party there. But as we know, these creatures aren't the only enormous things in the One Piece world. You have giant elephants, sea kings, goldfish, trees, gates, and even the Tower of Impel Down reaches from the bottom of the ocean, which we know to be 10 kilometers deep, all the way to the surface. So for comparison, the largest building on Earth right now is the Burj Khalifa, and it's quote-unquote only 828 meters tall. In other words, Impel Down is 12 times taller than the tallest building humanity has ever built. And even if it's only half that size, that's still very impressive. But clearly, the giant things from the past have gotten smaller and smaller over time. Ancient giants are getting smaller and smaller with each generation, as are normal giants and maybe even humans. Now, this phenomenon actually exists in our world as well. As we now know, there were actual hobbit people and small elephants that evolved due to something called island dwarfism. It's basically an evolutionary process that reduces body size when a large animal is limited to a small environment, primarily islands, which, whoop-de-doo, look at that, is just what we have in One Piece. Could it be that the One Piece world once had much more land for these giant creatures and structures to evolve? I mean, the One Piece world does look incredibly artificial after all, and we've just gotten confirmation from the manga that One Piece takes place in a post-apocalyptical world that used to have advanced technology. There is Pangaea Castle on top of the Red Line, the only continent in the world, and Pangaea, as you know, was the name of the supercontinent that once existed here on Earth. And the by now infamous globe on Ohara with multiple moons also shows something that could very well be the Red Line, but with many larger land masses butted up against it that clearly don't exist anymore. So could the mythology-loving Oda have been inspired by the flood myth that exists in pretty much every culture in our world as well? Or in other words, was the world of One Piece at some point flooded until only islands remained? Well, there might be some hints for that. Most obvious of all is, of course, the literal Ark Noah, an ancient ship large enough to carry an entire civilization and based on the ship that was kind of connected to the entire flood myth. You have curious underwater structures all throughout One Piece. The giant whirlpool and the hole under Enies Lobby, placed directly next to these enormous gates larger than anything else in One Piece that also reach down all the way to the bottom of the ocean. Next to it, Impel Down, a tower that looks like a defense tower with places to stand outside and potentially harboring a whole nation if under attack from a major enemy. A structure that is also built from bottom to top, not the other way around. Places like Arubana in Alabasta are curiously placed on top of this tall plateau, and in Wano, we've already seen an entire ancient world sunken underneath the water. But what on earth could do something like this? Well, now that we know about the futuristic technology that used to exist in One Piece before the Void Century, it's really not that hard to imagine, really. The Ancient Kingdom was probably even more technologically advanced than humanity in our own world right now, with giant robots and frequent space travel. So I mean, if we have the potential to destroy our planets, they surely had that ability as well, right? In One Piece, Uranus, named after the Greek god of the sky, is said to possess powers enough to destroy whole worlds. Not islands, worlds. And this is stated as a matter of fact in One Piece, even by people as scientifically accurate as Robin. So how do people know what Uranus is actually capable of off, well, because its powers might have been witnessed before. It might well be that the ancient weapon Uranus has been used not only once, but even twice before, history repeating itself. For all we know, there's not only the Void Century in One Piece, but a whole pre-history before it. Places like Arubana date back 4,000 years ago, the Atom Tree 5,000 years ago. This is all way before the Ancient Kingdom. This could well have been the age where people like the sun god Nika lived, though this is truly speculation now, so let's put that aside. Matter of fact is that there are signs throughout the world of One Piece that a cataclysmic flood occurred at least once that created this world of islands with the rulers, or gods as they're known, of the world, whether it's the Lunarians or the Celestial Dragons, living on top of the Red Line, far out of reach. But we're not quite done yet. Let's go down to that final crazy level that brings this all the way back to Ors. Yes, I haven't forgotten what this video was all about originally. Now, since we're already kind of in the land of speculation now, let me start with the premise here. What if Uranus was not a weapon used by the Ancient Kingdom, as is commonly assumed for some reason, but against it? Let me introduce the Titan myth. The person who came up with this really deserves a medal of sorts, by the way. Now, in case you're not super familiar with Greek mythology, the gods like Zeus, Pluto, Poseidon, and Uranus were not the first to rule the world. It was actually the Titans. After defeating the Titans, the gods then banished them to Tartarus, to Hell, and built their castle on Mount Olympus. Now, this would very nicely combine both the Abrahamic influences of the flood, the Adam and Eve tree, and the devil fruit with the Greek creation myth at the same time. In case you're wondering, Tartarus and Hades are not the same thing, by the way. Hades is where people go when they die, but Tartarus, according to Zeus, is as far beneath Hades as heaven is above Earth. And we do know that the Red Line goes just as high above the ocean as it goes beneath it. Also, I want to note that not all Titans in these myths were actually Titan size. Some were human size, and of course, the Titans are known as the natural enemies of the gods. Now, doesn't this all fit in very, very nicely with all of One Piece? Surrounding the three gates of justice, bigger than anything else in the story that could represent the locking away of the Titans, we have the Island of Justice, Enies Lobby, the Island of Punishment, Impel Down, and the Island of Death, Marine Headquarters. And all three together form the image of Hell. Enies Lobby has the three-headed Cerberus image through the three-headed Guardian Baskerville. Impel Down is modeled after Dante's Inferno, even including Fiddler's Green as Newcomer Islands. And War is considered to be the best representation of Hell on Earth, which we do experience in Marineford, which was Luffy's personal hell. So could the three gates of justice and the giant whirlpool be the thing that trapped the Titans, the Oni race at the bottom of the ocean? Which would of course also fit very well with the idea of Laugh Tale being down there too. Does Luffy's journey, like so many other heroes, take him over the edge of the world to the bottom of the sea to free the Oni race so that the Titans, the original inhabitants of the One Piece world, can walk the planet once again? This would of course also fit in perfectly with the reveal of the Ancient Kingdom's advanced technology. The Titans, just like Ors, aka Joy Boy, would have been the inhabitants of this great kingdom. And by the way, if you're curious about that big reveal and what it means, I broke it down for you in this video right here, so you can go watch that next if you like.